Hi, and welcome to Gadget News and Review. We are home to some of the coolest gadgets, and the best consumer reviews online, buyer's guides and features. If you like our review, please subscribe for more upcoming reviews videos. Samsung Galaxy S10e Review. Flagship performance and great cameras at a discount. The Galaxy S10e is Samsung's flagship phone with 2019 specs and features at 2016 prices, giving consumers the opportunity to score all of the cool new features in the Galaxy S10 at a solid discount. In such a way, the S10e for Essential has plenty in common with the Apple iPhone XR, and it's easy to see it as the Samsung budget flagship version of the iPhone XS line. Both pack the standout perks of their generation in a handset that isn't quite as svelte or feature-rich as their costlier siblings. But you probably won't be picking between either less expensive device, you'll be eyeballing those handsets compared to their costlier siblings. We found the S10e to a robust phone that's worth foregoing the extra perks in the S10, which is $150 per £113 per $210 more, or the S10 Plus $250 per £189 per $350 more. As a bonus, the S10e's smaller dimensions will certainly appeal to folks who don't appreciate the increasing size of flagship phones. Those baseline perks are still impressive, though there's a new top-tier flagship in town, the Samsung Galaxy Note 10. On top of the expected S Pen stylus, it also has a time-of-flight sensor alongside the S10 line's triple-camera setup. But even compared to Samsung's newest phone, as well as the upcoming iPhone 11 and Google Pixel 4, the Galaxy S10e still has solid appeal for its lower price, likely discounted so long after launch, and smaller size make it stand out. Naturally, there are compromises for that lower cost. The S10e doesn't get some of the neat features packed in its pricier siblings, like an in-screen fingerprint sensor, curved screen sides or a telephoto lens. These perks have indeed appeared in more handsets in 2019, like the Huawei P30 and OnePlus 7 Pro, so it'll be curious to see if their exclusion gives you flagship phone envy. But we doubt you'll be too jealous. The Galaxy S10e is a one-hand-friendly phone with outstanding specs to match, a combo that will endear the handset to you. Its 5.8-inch all-screen display is easy to hold, and its chipset is fast enough that it'll compete with other flagships for years to come, even if its compromises in display resolution and camera fall short of the Samsung Galaxy S10 and Galaxy S10 Plus. The Samsung Galaxy S10e came out on March 8, 2019 in the US, Canada, Europe, India, China, and other select countries. It'll roll out to a total of 130 markets by the end of March, though the company hasn't specified exactly which countries it'll be available in by then. The Galaxy S10e retails for $749 per £669 per $1,199 per $2,699 United Arab Emirates dirhams for the 6GB of RAM and 128GB of storage version. If you want the slightly more powerful 8GB of RAM and 256GB of storage, at this point, it seems like it's only available on the US Samsung online store, and you'll pay $849. Prices aren't available outside the US for it. It's unclear if this means the higher-priced model isn't available in other regions. As previously stated, one of the Galaxy S10e's more attractive features might, ironically, be its smaller size. As main flagships get ever larger, a contingent of consumers have steadily gone for smaller phones. Just look at the popularity of the iPhone SE (RIP), and the S10e is as manageable as top-tier phones get with a width of 2.75 inches. Curiously, the iPhone XS is the smallest of its generation, and the S10e is smaller than that phone by a hair. The S10e otherwise looks like a shrunken version of its pricier siblings, with a few exceptions. Samsung didn't include the Galaxy line's Infinity Edge tapered display in this less expensive model, so you'll have to accept a flat front screen with more noticeable bezels. As it's the smallest of the S10 line, the S10e is also the lightest, coming in at 150 grams, which is another feather in its cap when compared to the 208 grams iPhone XR. While the S10e doesn't have its pricier siblings' fancy in-screen fingerprint scanner, Samsung didn't leave a biometric fingerprint pad on the back, opting instead to put a small capacitive sensor within an enlarged power button on the top right side. It's surprisingly responsive, though it works far better with thumbs. Why? Because you have to cover the whole sensor with your digit, and mashing your fingertip flat enough to envelop the button is tough from any angle. Just use a thumb. Otherwise, the phone looks flagship, with a chromed aluminum case sandwiched by attractive glass and the elegant rounded corners we've come to love in the Galaxy S line. The rear has a narrower camera bump than its pricier siblings due to the lack of a third camera and the absence of a heartbeat sensor, which might be an admission that folks weren't using it much anyway. The phone officially comes in 6 colors, though only 4 are available in the US: Prism Black, the pearlescent Prism White, shimmering Prism Blue, and the new punchy pastel Flamingo Pink. Sadly, Prism Green and Canary Yellow are restricted to other regions. The S10e's left edge has the volume rocker, which is responsive and functional. Below it sits the much disliked Bixby button, but fear not, Samsung has gamely allowed you to finally use it to activate other apps. There is a caveat: the button functionality has been split into single and double presses, and one of those must activate Bixby. Luckily, it's easy to coordinate Bixby to double press and set single press to whatever your heart desires. Considering how much Samsung has fought to keep third-party apps from remapping Bixby out of the picture, we'll take this compromise. On the bottom edge, you'll find a center-mounted USB-C port, microphone port, speaker grill and a 3.5mm headphone jack. Samsung has kept its trash-talking high ground. The 5.8-inch AMOLED display lives up to the Galaxy S name, with bright colors and crisp detail. If you don't quite like the color balance, you can tinker with an easy fix called Vivid Mode, which does what it says on the box and lets you further tweak it to be a warmer, more red, or cooler, more blue picture. If even that isn't enough, you can tinker with the RGB levels individually. Side by side with an iPhone XS Max, the S10e screen kept up gamely, losing out only on the darkest scenes in a media comparison. The Blackwater episode of Game of Thrones is good fodder for this. Just saying, where backgrounds of varying blacks average out into dark gray smudges. This is somewhat expected, as the S10e has a single 2280 by 1080, 438 pixels per inch resolution setting. Samsung sets this as the default for its flagship phones, but both the S10 and S10 Plus max out at 3040 by 1440 for a higher approximately 550 pixels per inch. One other minor difference between the models: the S10e has Corning Gorilla Glass 5 on front and back, while its bigger siblings have had their front display's glass upgraded to Gorilla 6. What the whole S10 line has in common, however, is the punch hole in the top right corner of the screen, the source of the Samsung-termed Infinity O display. It's noticeable, like the notches before it, though far less an eyesore than the wider camera tabs found in the likes of the iPhone XS and XS Max. In some ways, dropping the hole within the display looks more attractive than tucking it into a corner, as the eye naturally gravitates toward the uninterrupted borders of the lit screen rather than the circular cutout. But it also feels like Samsung's flexing its design and manufacturing chops here rather than offering a dynamic solution to the front-facing camera issue. Whether you like it or not will probably come down to personal taste. We like it, but wouldn't hold it against you to dismiss the punch hole as a stopgap stunt. In any case, most media apps will automatically black bar the top and bottom of the display to fit their aspect ratio, which envelops the punch hole. Don't worry about it getting in the way of your binge sessions. The S10e comes with 2 rear-facing main cameras, a dual-aperture f1.5 to 2.412 MP main camera with OIS for smoothing out your shaky footage and a 1.6 MP f2.2 ultrawide shooter. The S10 and S10 Plus have both of those, as well as a 2x optical zoom lens for a triple lens array that's become standard on flagships like the Huawei Mate 20 and LG V40 Think. It's possible that users will miss the telephoto lens, but if the phone was going to ditch any of the 3, we're glad it was one we wouldn't use as often as the wide and ultrawide. Even packing 2 cameras makes the S10e an upgrade over last year's Samsung Galaxy S9, which had a single dual-aperture shooter. Taking wider shots is great for sheer functionality. The main camera has a 77-degree field of view, but the ultrawide has 123-degree FOV, which captures a surprising amount of extra context on the sides of a shot. Best of all, while dialing up or down zoom increments, switching between wide and ultrawide lenses is virtually seamless, which is a departure from the clanky transition when doing the same with the Huawei Mate 20 Pro. So, how do the photos look? In our casual i.e. automatic settings shots, Samsung's nailed photos in bright sunlight, and they even take better photos than the iPhone XS Max and Huawei Mate 20 Pro in photos with both indoor-outdoor sections. The other two handle interiors fine, but the S10e doesn't blow out those bright exterior areas at all. It doesn't do dark shots as well, though, and its night photography doesn't hold a candle to the current king, the Google Pixel 3. Another cool thing about having an ultrawide lens? Samsung uses it for panoramas, which means you'll get a bit more context above and below your sprawling image. It's very noticeable and something that will make your extra-wide photo scrolls that much better than those taken with your friends' phones. Just don't be surprised if the bowing at the top and bottom of these panoramas are extra tweaked from the ultrawide. Bixby Vision is back, of course. The AI-powered Camera Edition is a motley collection of services that recognize real-world objects and make suggestions, from shopping to finding related images online to wine pairing tips. Fortunately, you can and should toggle these on and off so you're not overloaded with matching images from Pinterest. There's also an R mode with, thus far, a few odd applications. If you want to see how some eyeshadow and lipstick look on you, here's a way to do that without Snapchat. Or you can see how furniture would look in your room by dropping an animated model in, though the models tended to hover over rather than sit right on the floor. Galaxy S9 veterans who haven't upgraded to Samsung's One UI interface overhaul will find a few changes here that support the refined UI's controls on the bottom theme. The carousel of photo modes, for example, are now on the bottom just above the shutter button, much like every other phone camera app out there. While the S10e only has a single 10MP front-facing lens, there's a simulated ultra-wide mode that zooms out a bit. While it's not Pixel 3 levels of wide, you'll still get some breathing room for selfies, which is handy. Otherwise, expect them to be bright and serviceable, though you'll feel the lack of a depth sensor when going in for live focus, the depth-adding portrait mode. The S10 phones are the first in many markets to feature the new Snapdragon 855 chipset, and will be for some time into 2019. Sure, it would be a surprise if Samsung gimped its Essential model with an older processor, but it's still nice to see it get a leading chip, especially after Apple did the same for the iPhone XR. The S10e managed a blistering 10,523 average score on Geekbench 4, if you wanted its performance put to numbers. The phone's baseline 6GB of RAM and 128GB of storage will be more than enough for most people. We zipped around the UI swapping apps with abandon and didn't see a snag. You can upgrade to 8GB of RAM and 256GB of space for a modest price bump, at least in the US, but that's probably only necessary if you absolutely need more space. If the higher tier isn't available in your region, you can expand storage with a micro SD card. The phone can certainly keep up when gaming, handling Asphalt and Fortnite at highest specifications. Just be aware that playing at the top of its capabilities will drain the battery. An extended Fortnite match zapped 5% and heat up the phone a bit too. As for the battery, the S10e packs a 3100 mAh unit, which was plenty to get through the day while managing chat apps, email and listening to music. Recharging is quick with up to 15W fast charging and 15W wireless charging, which isn't the fastest wattage charging on the market, but it gets the job done. And you might need to top up a bit more often if you've got other wireless devices, because now, the S10e can charge them itself thanks to a new feature, wireless power share. One of the S10 series tricks that hasn't been snipped out of the S10e is pretty exciting, if you've got devices to use it. Essentially, you can use your S10e to wirelessly charge other devices that have Qi-enabled charging thanks to a new feature called Wireless Power Share, a far better name than reverse wireless charging, which is what Huawei chose when it debuted the perk in the Huawei Mate 20 Pro in late 2018. In theory, the wireless power share feature is simple: turn it on, place the second device on the rear cover of the S10e, and wait. Sadly, wireless charging speeds are still slow, so you'll have to leave your Samsung phone alone if you want to transfer battery power to another device. In practice, it's not too hard to figure out. You can manually turn PowerShare on by digging around in the settings, though Samsung helpfully put a shortcut in the Easy Access drop-down settings window. You'll have to place the device in the exact center of the S10e's rear cover for it to charge, though the phone will buzz once to let you know when it's donating juice, and double buzz when the receiving device has moved out of the recharging zone. It's an awesome feature, though probably not one you'll use a lot, save for nobly sacrificing some charge to revive a mate's low-power phone. But Samsung did suggest a novel use case: plug your S10e into a wall charger, activate PowerShare and use your phone to recharge a second device, like, say, Samsung's new Galaxy Buds, overnight. Voila, only one wall outlet used. Let's say you did that and oops, the wall plug fell out but your S10e was still charging another device. Will your phone die while pumping charge out? No, thankfully, Samsung introduced a failsafe that turns off PowerShare once the donating phone hits 30% charge. Heck, you can't even turn on the feature until you charge the S10e back up above that threshold. Now is the time for this reviewer to admit his bias. After stubbornly refusing to upgrade his iPhone 6s until very recently, he finds most large phones grotesque handfuls. The S10e is a perfect substitute for that Apple phone, almost uncannily identical in size despite its larger screen, thanks to smaller bezels. From that perspective, the S10e is a pleasantly sized phone that's just small enough to use one-handed. Admittedly, if this category of sub-6-inch phones weren't so sparse, we'd be a bit less starry-eyed, but it's also true that Samsung's interface works even better in such a compact frame. Some of that is thanks to One UI, Samsung's recent overhaul of its UI overlay, which has placed most things you need helpfully low and right-aligned where your thumb is likely to hover. You can switch things around, like for the Edge panel, if you fiddle with the settings, which have been reshuffled into fewer broad categories that become more specified if you delve deep enough. As expected, the S10e gets Android 9 Pie out of the box, along with One UI, so you've got the latest and greatest mobile OS. Since it's part of a flagship series, the S10e may be one of the first of the company's phones in line when Android Q is released, which will likely be far later in the year. Given how slow Samsung is to update its phone, plenty of other devices will probably get the upgrade first. Samsung claims that they've harnessed AI to optimize performance, and we're inclined to agree, as it's pretty effortless to zoom around the interface. Slightly cooler are the other things Samsung's done with AI, like Bixby routines, which take certain actions when a condition triggers, IFTTT style. You can set these up manually, but the phone should start learning your habits and suggest routines unique to you, Samsung claims. We weren't prompted to set any, so it might need more time with the phone or more AI tweaking. Media-wise, the S10e has more in favor than complaint. True, its smaller size means less screen real estate to watch videos, and it's noticeably deficient when placed side by side with a Plus Max-sized flagship phone. It's gaming where the diminutive form factor takes the greatest hit, and your thumbs will cover up precious screen space on either side where more active games typically house their controls. If you're playing a game where every edge matters, like, say, in Fortnite, you'll be a little hampered compared to players on bigger phones. Size aside, it's a good phone for enjoying less frenetic media, with things like a video enhancer feature to make things you watch more comprehensible. An accessible headphone jack only makes the experience better, and the speakers in the earpiece and bottom edge boast respectable volume, though you'll get more nuanced audio out of Apple's flagships. It's hard not to recommend the S10e to anyone who prefers a smaller phone. Size queens, look elsewhere. This smartphone is for folks who want to text and browse apps one-handed. Considering also the handful of top-shelf perks cut to save costs, the S10e isn't the trophy flagship you flaunt to make the fellas jealous. Instead, think of it as the best flagship you could get from 2016 phone possibilities that still costs a 2016 flagship price. That could leave the S10e open to late-year competition from phones that trim features even closer to the bone to save costs, like OnePlus tends to do. We'll have to see if the upcoming OnePlus 7 puts up a strong fight, but even if it does, the S10e still might come out on top thanks to sheer availability. Nothing's worse than knowing there's a slightly better phone out there that you just can't buy.